Now, I think Bitcoin is going to a lot higher levels. Again, as you know, I've talked about the 150,000 minimum objective target for the inverse head and shoulders pattern. Like it's about 151, 152,000 or so. And the 175,000 area, which is the Fibonacci extension levels. If you didn't get a chance to see those target levels, you can watch my last video. I'll link it at the end of this one. You can see the actual Fibonacci extension levels that I'm looking at that go into the upper channel line. The question right now is, do we get a back test of the bull flag that we got a breakout here of the bull flag and pull back to the 10 and 20 period moving average after breaking out, back testing. We broke out of the resistance zone. That became support, and our 50 period moving average. We've rallied back up, bouncing off that 50 period, bouncing off horizontal support, bouncing off the rising trend line, and slammed up into the resistance directly overhead and got a lower high, at least so far. Do we end up getting a back test, or if negative divergences, a larger negative divergence ends up developing here, you could still get a bigger pullback beyond this low right here. I told you I thought that was a bottom. I could be wrong about that. We could get a bigger pullback still. Bitcoin goes back into a positive, if it moves back into a positive correlation with the stock market, which it's doing the same thing the stock market's doing right now. There's been periods of short-term decoupling. They bottomed together back on April 7th, but there have been periods of short-term decoupling, which happens longer term. There is a longer-term positive correlation. I think Bitcoin and the stock market are both moving to higher levels. The question is right now, do we get a back test here for a mild pullback or something bigger? But as I keep saying, again, we've had a breakout of a bull flag pattern. There's a lot of resistance directly overhead. Remember, back at our July peak over here, we turned off a major trend line in the weekly time frame from the 2017 high. We turned off of that trend line. I think we're pulling back to build momentum to eventually try to get back above it. As we pull back, this bull flag formed at our 50 period moving average and horizontal support. So again, I think this is the bottom right here. I think we could still get a pullback. If I'm wrong about this being a bottom, we'd have to take out the 50 period moving average, come take out that low. If divergences were to form. Again, moving slightly higher here right now, even though we had a topping tail over here that was higher than the level we're at right now, the close over here, the close right here, slightly higher with that divergence for our pullback, and now we're getting a slightly higher level if we close higher today by the close. We're up about 1%. We were up higher than that. We were up about 1.5% at the highs. Watching this. Again, the MACD firming up at the center line. Now, again, it is forming a divergence, but again, that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to play out. We're firming up at the center line. When you're in positive territory and you got a bullish cross, we may pull back and then just resume the advance. So again, I believe you have a bottom right here at the 50 period moving average. I think we've had a breakout here after going sideways. The tightening of the bands telling us the squeeze move was coming. We went down, and I told you oftentimes you'll get the tightening of the bands and you'll go down in one way and then move in the other direction. I think you're going to get a pullback here, likely back tested the breakout again, maybe even hit the 50 period again. But I think the odds greatly favor a higher low if we do get a bigger pullback. I am getting some sell signals here with our topping tail a couple of days ago. The signals are going back and forth from bearish to bullish, doing what the S&P is doing. Again, going sideways, turning down, and then rebounding back up to test the highs. The S&P moving slightly higher. Bitcoin's moving higher today, if we do it on a closing basis, higher than the topping tails we had over here. Does that suggest maybe a pullback? Again, we're getting the 10 back above the 20 period moving average. Oftentimes when that happens, you pull back towards those moving averages. We had it back over here the last time that we got it. We had the 10 get back above the 20 right here, and we pull back to those moving averages. So you could see a back test of the bull flag. After the pullback to the 10 and 20 period moving average and there at the 50 as well, we bounced, and then the advance resumed, and we got the breakout of the bull flag back over here, which I have not marked on this chart. Just marking the rectangle sideways move here. It was a bull flag, as I talked about at the time. We ended up having a breakout of the bull flag and a breakout above the resistance zone. One reason why I think this low is probably going to hold is because, again, the previous lows in the weekly time frame, the the previous highs have acted as support for the new lows that have developed. We had that happen here. We had it happen back over here at the 74,000 area. This is what I used, this 50 period moving average and this horizontal support. One of the tools I used to call the bottom here. I had several signals mark the day of the bottom, which I talked to you back at the time on April 7th. I had bottoming signals April 7th, 8th, and 9th. Talked about those back at the bottom. And I told you, again, if we break this level, that's extremely bearish. If we bounce here, that's extremely bullish. And that's why I predicted the bottom here. Still think we're going to go much higher. There's that bull flag here. We broke out there, and now we formed another little bull flag, not marked on this chart. But again, could we back test it? We've seen these previous highs break above them, and then they've acted as support, as I've talked about in my videos. So I think this low is likely going to hold, but we could get a pullback, building momentum to clear the resistance. Bitcoin pulls back. Again, look at the trend line. This is a reason why I told you at 111,900 here at the 50 period, I thought we had another bottom. I think that's going to be proven correct because, again, we're bouncing off horizontal support. We slightly violated the 112,000 area, went to about 111,900 and found a bottom there and bounced at the 50. And this trend line right here going back to when I called the bottom on April 7th. Look at that. And I've taken it from the April 9th low, formed a little miniature double bottom on the intraday charts, and we connect that to our low here in June. On June 22nd, I got another bottoming signal there. I just had another bottoming signal here at this level. So again, if we pull back, I think you can back test this level, back test the trend line, back test the 50 period, bounce off of it, or I should say test it again. There it is. Test the 50, test the trend line, test the upper boundary of the bull flag. So again, I think there could be more work to be done in here before resuming the advance. But again, this is why I believe that we have a bottom right here. Again, if I'm wrong, we take out the trend line, we take out the 50 period moving average, then you've got your 100 period moving average down here. But if you take out the cloud right here, then risk is you get something bigger. My guess is that we've had a wave 1 and a wave 2, and I think we're in wave 3. I think we've got our first 2 intermediate waves likely done, and I think we're in the third minor wave of intermediate wave 3 of primary wave 3. So I think that you're going to have a significant move higher, but likely going to back test this level. So again, I continue to believe Bitcoin's likely headed to 171,500 or Fibonacci extension, 174,700 area, I believe it is. Again, another Fibonacci extension. I talked about all this in my last update. See the charts for yourself. I'm not going to show you in this video. I do show those charts on a regular basis in my videos, but all near that 175,000 area. That's where I think Bitcoin's headed. That's where I think Bitcoin is likely going to peak. It may overthrow that level, go to 180, 185,000, 190,000. I think this Bitcoin cycle is going to likely end under 200,000, near 200,000. I think it's going to be likely under, in my opinion, and I have a target range of around 150 to 175,000. The 150 is because of the inverse head and shoulders. That's where it measures to. The 175,000 is where my upper channel line is in the weekly time frame, and you saw all of that in my last update. See if we get a back test here of the trend line, a back test of the breakout of the bull flag. But again, this is why I called another bottom right here. And notice the RSI got back above the 50 level. The MACD firmed up in the center line. Now again, a divergence could be developing that could give us a pullback, but I don't think that we're likely going to see the MACD move back into negative territory. And again, it may not even roll over. It may be that we just get a pullback, building momentum to go higher. So again, I think you're going to end up forming a much larger divergence here as we go on into September and October. And I do believe that Bitcoin's going to rally likely over the next couple of months, probably into October. It even goes longer, maybe November or December. Bitcoin peaked in November of 2021. That was when it peaked. It could drag out a little while. A date is not my target. A date is not my target. A number is not my target. This trend line right here is my target for Bitcoin. Now, whenever we reach that, October, November, whatever, December, That's where I think Bitcoin's going to top. Whether we reach it and go parabolic immediately, reach it sooner rather than later, and we're at lower levels closer towards 150, 160, 65,000, or whether we take our time reaching it, we go to higher levels, which could be above 175,000, 180, 185, 190,000. I think we're moving towards the 200,000 level. And again, my target is 175,000, but we very well may overthrow it if we take our time reaching it. This is what I think is happening. I think you got 5 primary waves. I think we're in primary wave 3. And I think that will complete the cycle top, marked there in red, completing the super cycle wave 5, marked in blue. And here's number 4. And this whole thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And then I think you're done. So this is where I think we're headed. When we get there, again, we can guesstimate, maybe October, November, maybe September if we do it rapidly. Just food for thought. That's where I think we're headed. Once we get there, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin now. But once we get there, I'm going to get very bearish. That's why I think Bitcoin's going to top and we're going to usher in a bear market. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. I don't have any sponsors. I turn those offers down. Just a direct relationship with you. If you like the chart, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel. Today, if you could take a moment to do that and partner with me, I would really appreciate it. I just show you all the stuff I'm looking at to make my decisions. Watch the video all the way through. I'm talking about Ethereum in this video as well. If you follow the link below, it'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Thank you for your consideration for that. Watch the video all the way through. Towards the end of the video, I'll show you some of my amazing indicators. Again, my signals have flipped back to bullish. Bounced up the key level of support that I talked about at the 112,000 area. I believe that's likely the bottom. I think we'll probably pull back. Backtest the breakout of the bull flag. Then I think Bitcoin's going to go much, much higher. I think it's going parabolic. I think you're likely in primary wave 3, probably getting our first subwave here of intermediate wave 3. If we get a pullback for wave 2, Bitcoin could just really rip higher. Intermediate wave 3 of primary wave 3 after the next pullback. So watch the video all the way through and you'll see these amazing indicators. Could be though my signals turn back to bearish, or we get a pullback and they still remain bullish, something like what we had over here. Again, corrective move. I don't think we're going to take out this low as we did over here. I do think we're likely going to back test the breakout of the bull flag and probably establish a higher low. It has had some significant pullbacks that I've marked right here. You can see it on the 4-hour chart. I think that the stock market will get a bigger pullback like Bitcoin has had, and Bitcoin may get a smaller pullback, just a back test, the breakout of our bull flag pattern, if they both pull back at the same time, again, having that positive correlation. But Bitcoin, they've had periods of decoupling where we've seen these bigger pullbacks with Bitcoin. So I think we could get a bigger pullback with the stock market and a smaller pullback with Bitcoin to back test. Here's my Elliott wave count on the 4-hour chart. Again, I believe that from the 74,000 low, when I call the day of the bottom, and to this move right here to our May 22nd high, I think that was wave 1. Then I think we corrected down here to the June 22nd low for wave 2, and I think we had a complex corrective move. I think we are now in primary wave 3, and I think we're getting these subwaves. I think we had 5 minor waves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to complete intermediate wave 1. We're getting the breakout and back test for wave 2, intermediate wave 2, and I think we're in intermediate wave 3, but we could still see a pullback. Look at this. I think that in this, we could have our first minor wave of wave 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, either with a truncated fifth, or maybe we go a little higher, forming a divergence. Then you get a pullback for the 2, and then boom, it is off to the races. After we backtest, I think we're going to build momentum to clear the 2017 trend line that we stalled at back over here. So again, I believe that we are in primary wave 3 here. You got intermediate wave 1, 2, and I think we're in intermediate wave 3, and we could be getting our first minor wave of intermediate wave 3. I think you're going to get an aggressive push higher, and I think Bitcoin's likely going to peak. I think that, again, as I talked about my last update, towards the end of the move, you go parabolic with Bitcoin. At least that's the way it's happened in the past. 2017, first 2021 peak, the second 2021 peak. Back in 2013, you seem to get these final phase, the final phase of the blow off top with a parabolic rise, is what I believe is likely going to be the case. But while I think we're going to pull back, and here we are getting the 50, trying to get the 50 above the 200, we could throw back to these levels and then August correction and resume the advance, rally in September, maybe on into October, possibly into November. I don't know that it goes that long, but it could. Trend line's not my target, not a date. Again, I believe that this low is likely a bottom on Bitcoin, but I think we could pull back, and if negative divergences develop here in the 4-hour time frame on the MACD and on the RSI, we could get that a pullback, something like this, where we had a divergence over here, but then it was followed by this move right here. Shortly after, firming up around the center line. Had a divergence over here. We got a bigger pullback. Now it's been followed by this rally. So I think we could pull back, but then it could be followed by a bigger rally. I think Ethereum is likely going to pull back. It's forming a major divergence now. Well, Ethereum is playing catch up to Bitcoin. It's been going parabolic, forming negative divergences. Let me just show you Ethereum real fast. Again, I do expect Bitcoin is going to pull back. I do believe that we are in primary wave 3, and likely we're already have begun the intermediate wave 3 of primary wave 3. So again, after this pullback, Bitcoin should be getting a third of the third, which should cause it to just explode higher like a rocket ship. Likely quickly getting above the resistance that we hit over here at 123,000. And Ethereum here in the daily time frame is forming this negative divergence. Again, we're hitting this trend line and overthrowing it. I've just drawn a parallel boundary to this lower trend line right here. So again, we could see it, and right now we're trying to slightly overthrow this level, but we could see these divergences begin to play out with a bigger pullback for Ethereum. Been playing catch up to Bitcoin. You are forming these divergences on the RSI and the MACD. So again, we could see a bigger pullback for Ethereum and a smaller pullback for Bitcoin. Ethereum's just been going parabolic here in the last several trading sessions here, bouncing off our 20-period moving average. As Ethereum moves towards the November 2021 high at that 4,800 area, here it is at the 4,700 area, breaking above the more recent peaks that we've seen, but not above that 2021 peak yet. But you are getting a 13.9 here. That doesn't necessarily mean a top. We got a 9 yesterday. We're still going higher, but it does mean price is getting tired. So you could have price exhaustion and get a pullback, a bigger pullback for Ethereum. Signals are still bullish right now. Just telling you that might change once that divergence in the daily time frame begins to play out. Maybe Ethereum pulls back to go challenge that 2021 peak, or possibly the divergence completes above the 2021 peak, but here it is on Ethereum's weekly chart. Here's that 2021 peak. Bitcoin's already moved above the 2021 high. Ethereum going back towards it right now. We are not above that level, but just under it here at the 4,700 level. Here it is at the 4,800 level. Moved above these highs that were made in 2024, not above the 2021 high. So again, we'll be watching to see what happens with Ethereum. It has gone parabolic here in the last several weeks here this summer. To play catch up to Bitcoin, already moved to new highs. We'll see if Ethereum does that right here and now and then pulls back, or if it makes a lower high to build momentum to try to challenge this peak at a later date. There's been a lot of hype with Ethereum in recent days, the last several weeks here. At some point, somebody's going to take profits. We'll see a pullback. But we are, as you can clearly see here on the weekly chart, we are going parabolic. Just remember, some of these parabolic moves here, 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 they were followed by very sharp declines over here, over here, over here, and over here. You get these very parabolic moves on Ethereum, and they have been followed by very sharp corrections or reversals. Just keep that in mind. forming the negative divergence in the daily time frame for Ethereum. I'm getting a lot of questions about Ethereum, so I just wanted to cover that in the video. The thing about Ethereum, it's up 243% from the bottom when we bottomed out in April. Again, nice performance, but even when we moved up originally off the low here, we had gotten 100% move very quickly. Eventually, we did get a pullback. So again, I think it's likely we're either going to get a lower high or move above the 2021 peak to complete the divergence, one or the other, and then get some kind of pullback with Ethereum. It may keep going a little bit longer if we try to clear that 2021 peak, but you can see the divergences as well as I can that are forming in the daily time frame. Beautiful, beautiful chart here. Downtrend with the red, uptrend, our first push higher, corrective move, resuming the advance, another corrective move, and then now parabolic move here. And I'm not saying Ethereum's done. It may just keep going to challenge that 2021 high. So please listen carefully to what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's forming a negative divergence. It's either going to set up a lower high or a slightly higher high and then get some kind of sell-off. I'm watching the negative divergence there on Ethereum in the daily time frame. Bitcoin, back to Bitcoin here. Well, I think Bitcoin will likely get a back test. Again, it could form a divergence here, fire close here, even go, try to go a little bit higher, challenge our high from a few days ago and the high over here, form a divergence to get a pullback to back test, break out of the bull flag. And I think we have an inverse head and shoulders pattern on Bitcoin, as I've talked about, and that measures to about the 152,000 area. And Bitcoin will reach that, and I think it will exceed it. I think it's going to go towards 175,000, where my Fibonacci extension levels are, closer to my upper boundary of the channel in the weekly time frame that I've shown you nearly every single video. So again, we'll see if we pull back. Again, going from blue to red, back to blue. Again, we're likely in wave 3. I think we probably, primary wave 3, and probably have started intermediate wave 3 in primary wave 3. We could be finishing our first minor wave of that intermediate wave 3 of primary wave 3. So again, after the next pullback, we could see Bitcoin just go up with an explosive move higher. Something similar to what we've just seen with Ethereum. Probably something like this, pretty aggressive for primary wave 3, which again, I believe began over here when we completed 2. And I think you have your first 2 intermediate waves done, and you're likely in your third intermediate wave of that primary wave 3. And again, I told you we had another bottoming signal here on August 3rd, bouncing off the purple line, getting back above the orange line. Again, we're probably going to back test after forming a divergence, but then I think we're going to see Bitcoin soar after that. I think we have another bottoming signal here like we had at the June 22nd low, like when I called the bottom over here. We had the bottoming signal on April 7th. Again, I programmed this indicator to tell me when we might see a short-term top or bottom. Sometimes you get short-term little pullbacks. Sometimes you get a little bit bigger of pullbacks. Sometimes you get major reversals like the top over here. But it can mark counter trends up or down. Also, the signals can be associated with major tops and bottoms, sometimes with these bigger corrective moves. So I think you've got a bottom here, as I've said. So we start taking out the 50-period moving average and the purple line here and the cloud in the daily time frame that we saw in the daily chart and the trend line from the low here. I think you're likely just going to pull back. Again, as the 10 and 20 period are getting a bullish cross, you could pull back to those moving averages, but we're seeing a bullish signal take place here. We've seen the balance of power go positive. We saw the momentum line turn back to bullish after some bottoming signals. So again, we have a breakout of a bull flag, and we'll probably end up back testing it. I think the whole pullback is that we got rejection at this trend line. Now, again, the trend line from 2017, this is our linear scaling. You connect it to the 2021 peak, the 2 2021 peaks, excluding the shadow from the first peak. You hit the 2021 high. You slammed into it in December and January. There, you got your sell-off, and then we attempted to clear this level, but we stalled up the trend line from 2017 to the 2021, the first 2021 peak, including the shadow. That's exactly where we stalled. I think you're pulling back here off of that trend line, getting the topping tail there here in the weekly time frame and in the daily time frame on May 22nd. pardon me, that was our July peak. Our May 22nd peak was back over here. This is our July peak. And I think you're pulling back off of this level to build momentum to eventually clear this trend line. Again, I think we will head towards the upper channel in the linear, with the log scaling. This is the linear. I think eventually we're going to get above this trend line and Fibonacci extension levels and reach the upper channel line with our weekly chart with our log scaling. You got to be able to clear this trend line, and that's why I think we're building momentum in order to do that. At the ribbon here, and if it does stall, it can get a bigger pullback to backtest a breakout of the bull flag. Not only do you have to get above the trend line from the 2017 high, but you got to be able to get back above the ribbon if we're going to resume the advance for Bitcoin. Now, again, it may still try to go above the July peak over here and end up forming a larger divergence. It doesn't have to. The RSI doesn't look at the topping tail. It looks at the closes. You do have a divergence if we close stronger here today and not move to a new high, but you still may do it. But again, I think you're likely going to see a back test before resuming the advance. We're probably completing our first minor wave of intermediate wave 3, a primary wave 3, and you're probably going to pull back and get a wave 2. Forming the bull flag, we saw signals turn bearish. Now they're back to bullish. We're probably going to see a back test in all likelihood of the bull flag. Again, we're in this consolidation, likely building momentum to clear the 2017 trend line, likely building momentum to clear the ribbon. So again, bars might flip back to red on some of my indicators, showing a sideways move, kind of like over here from blue to red, back to blue to red. We ended up forming the bull flag there. Here we already have a bull flag. I don't have it marked right here, but we already have a bull flag and a breakout that we could end up back testing. And if we do, some signals might turn back to red, showing a sideways move. Like I said, I think it's likely that this low is going to hold here at the 112,000 area, where I told you we had major support before we ever reached it. Talked about that being a level where we would find support on the pullback. I talked about that right after we got this topping tail. I talked about where might prices pull back to, and we talked about that level at great length and detail. As I'm making the video, Bitcoin's back up over 1% again. So again, we'll be watching to see if a divergence develops. It maybe gives us a back test. Signals back to bullish. Can they remain that way? They may not. They may flip back to bearish, even with the back test. Like I said, I think the low is going to hold. I think if we get the pullback for a back test, I think it's going to give us a higher low. Signals are back to bullish with Bitcoin. I do expect we're likely going to get a pullback to back test to break out of the bull flag. Again, trend signals bullish, momentum bullish, but I do expect we're likely going to back test the bull flag pattern. Bitcoin got a warning sign for a short-term top 3 days ago, and we still may exceed that level. We hit the upper Bollinger Band, testing that level again. Over here, you got a couple of them. You still went higher. Same is true for over here. Now, again, I'm not expecting a sell-off to follow like this. I'm expecting a pullback to back test as long as the 50-period moving average in the daily time frame can hold. But I do expect a pullback. Again, got a signal here. We corrected. If I go back a little further, we got a signal here. We corrected. I'm expecting a little pullback to correct to back test the breakout of the bull flag pattern. And again, while we're going higher, look at the trend. Let me just remove a couple of things so you can see. We're going flatlined right here, okay? If we're going to start going higher, we got to see it start turning back up. Over here, when we are correcting, we were going flatlined. Now we're turning back to green. So again, that's positive. We could still get a back test, build momentum to try to go higher to clear the 2017 trend line. I want to continue to point out here, there's been no topping signal. So even if we do pull back, I don't think the top is in. Got a bottoming signal back over here, a topping signal back over here, some corrections along the way. We got a reversal bar off the low after getting the reversal bar off the top. Again, I think you likely have a bottom here and you'll probably get a pullback. And I think we're building momentum to move towards 150,000 and likely eventually the 175,000 area.